So let's take a second to read this problem. A total of $18,000 is invested, some in stocks, some in bonds. If the amount invested in bonds is half that invested in stocks, how much is invested in each category? So what we're going to do is we're going to write some equations. So let's look at the first sentence. A total of 18,000 is invested, some in stocks, some in bonds. Well, first off, what are we trying to solve for? How much is it invested in each category? So we need to establish some variables. We're gonna do T for how much. Let's all write it out. So what does T represent? T is how much money in stocks, and then we'll do B for how much money in bonds. So when you think about what those variables actually represent now, it's not too difficult to write equations. There's a total of $18,000 is invested. So how can we write an equation for that? T is how much money is invested in stocks. B was how much money was invested in bonds. So if we do T plus B, that's the entire $18,000. So there's our first equation. Now we got to look at the second equation, and that's going to be the next sentence. If the amount invested in bonds is half that invested in stocks, how much is invested in each category? So we got to write the next equation. So if the amount invested in bonds, so that's B, is equals half of that invested in stocks. So times T. So I think that's the equation. I like to plug in a number and kind of make sure the equation makes sense. So I look at the sentence in the problem. If the amount invested in bonds is half that invested in stocks. So that means if I invest 100 in stocks, the amount invested in bonds is half of that. So it should be 50. And then let's make sure that works for the equation. If T is 100 and bonds is 50, yeah, our equation works. I really like to do that little step for myself to make sure that I have the equation the right way. Because in my mind, it's like, which one do you put the 1/2 on? And so when you check your answer like that, you know you put the 1/2 on the proper one. But okay, now we're here. So how can we solve this system of equations? Well, we're going to do substitution. Because look how they tell us that B is the same thing as 1/2 T. So what we can do is we can go up into the top equation and replace that B with 1/2 T to get something like this. And then we'll combine like terms. T plus 1/2 T. That should be 3/2 T. Not divided by anything yet. But then now we want to get T by itself. So how do we get T by itself? We got to get rid of that fraction. So I'm going to multiply both sides by not 3/2, but 2/3. And then again, just like we did before, don't do 18,000 times 2. You got to cancel stuff first. You got to see you got 18 divided by 3. So that's going to cancel out and make that 6,000. So 6,000 times 2 means we have $12,000 in stocks. And then like before, they said we had half of that in bonds. So that means we have 6,000 in bonds. And we can do our other check. Does that add up to 18,000? Yes, it does. So everything works out right. So some teachers, when they first introduce this, they don't have you write out the two equations. But I think that's the best way to see it. That's what this is. This is a system of equations. You have two different scenarios. You got the scenario where they add up to 18,000. You got the scenario where one is half of the other, and you need both of them to be true. So that's two equations that you need to be true. You got to solve them like a system of equations. And this is how you do it with substitution.